The feast of the Cappadocians, Basil and Gregory Nazianzen, is one that operates on several levels. First of all, we have in these two interesting characters great examples of giants of the monastic life who also were able to act. Basil has left us a whole spirituality of the monastic life, for as we have Benedictines, they have Basilians, and they follow his rule and writings to this day. We also have the Basilian liturgy, and we have that wedding of prayer and liturgy, which is the spirituality of the East par excellence, much time spent in the beyond. Liturgies which go on for several hours, and monastic life in particular is beyond time. Liturgies going on all night on Mount Athos, and so on, quite often, always starting at 3 o'clock, but on some nights going on from the vigils of the Vespers until dawn without a break. They have time, and they also have the notion of fear and trembling, for God is unapproachable, and they know it. We have also that element of being able then to be hugely powerful on the level of the life of the Church. For anchored in prayer, they were able then to become great bishops. Strangely enough, Gregory, from the deep contemplation in which he was bathed, was asked to be bishop of the most important see in the East, Constantinople itself, New Rome. But when he got there, he found that there was such division in the diocese that he felt that he couldn't cope with that, and he left it to the Holy Spirit and went back to the desert life, where he wrote much deep verse and poetry and prayed, rather like Benedict XVI, for the Church, hiding. However, they are also remembered for something else. It is one of the most beautiful examples that we have in Christian history of souls deeply bonded in spiritual friendship. Now, strangely enough, we do not celebrate on the same day Basil and Gregory of Nyssa, another monk and priest and a blood brother of Basil, and a son to another saint, who I believe was actually a bishop, and brothers to another saint, St. Macrina, a nun, therefore a whole family of saints, and therefore another bishop again, Gregory of Nyssa. But we do not feast those two, even though they're brothers, on this day, but we feast Basil and his best friend. Now Gregory came from Nazianzus and went to study at Athens. He was about a year older than Basil, and he had a great admiration for him. And we have from his own pen a testimony of the way in which, in God, they were, as he put it, one soul in two bodies. They were brilliant. They were in the Oxford of the time, Athens. They'd gone a long way to get there. And when one became victorious in what we would call the exams, the other was happy. There was no envy or jealousy. It was true friendship. And that is something that can only happen when it is based, as a true marriage is, not just in the human. Souls truly meet in God. That, by the way, is something to be borne in mind when in any way counselling young people, that they have to be aware that if it's not based on depth, then what is peripheral will reveal itself after not very long. It is true that even on the human level one can be bonded. However, when there is divine grace and therefore divine life, there is another element, another dimension, and only that can happen really between souls who love in the first place the same God. For God then is dwelling in the midst, really, and one then creates a domestic church. Now, these two are feasted on the second day of the year, because Basil, I believe, died on the first day of the year, and of course that was already set apart as a liturgical day. The other died, I believe, on the 25th of January. And these two, therefore, are always remembered as we start the new year, placing us perhaps in the best place possible, the monastic desert, knowing that these two were able to act precisely because God was the prime mover. That is to be borne in mind when projecting anything at the beginning of a year. We can project many things, especially when it comes to the things of God, but sometimes it is not God's project. True, efficacious work, especially for the Lord, begins in God, and therefore, for that to happen, we need to be picking up what He is moving and inspiring, and not being fidgets ourselves. Unfortunately, God, if anything, is frustrated when He finds someone of goodwill doing all the work and not letting him get a word in edgeways. Sometimes it is better, like Gregory, to go back to the silence until God moves again. Silence. Now, how much do we need silence in this year? Therefore, before it is spent, let us look at some of the elements that could devastate this year before we have it. One would be precisely activism, and knowing that that can be very simply avoided in some realms. Too much exposure to the mobile phone is a form of, in some way, losing intimacy. We need something of that pure, virgin peace and quiet which only 50 years ago we still had in this land. A normal person now in the West does not know silence. But that's frightening. We need to be careful that we don't get that disease ourselves. For this year, if that's the case, we'll go just like that, all the time, buzzing, all the time, unable to face ourselves, and the risk of encountering the beyond and the one who inhabits it. Now, there is a third thing which I'd like to go into just for a few minutes. It's this, linked precisely with the gospel given to us on this day for these great saints. If we try to exalt ourselves, we will come down with a crash. Humility, similar actually to what we have from these two great pontiffs that we've had, Benedict in his gentle, unnoisy way, and now Francis in his evangelic way of serving and loving, are models to us. And perhaps it is an invitation to us also to be careful that we do not wish in this world to have our glory, because it is a fugitive glory. It does not exist. No man can glorify another. It is only in condivision and participation in the divine glory that in any way we can hope for some spark. Now, in that context, I just share something which hit me quite by chance, actually this very day and yesterday. It was in an old Bible I have, a Hebrew Bible which came from Germany years and years ago, because they're the experts at these studies. In it was, by chance, a bookmark, just a scrap of paper being used for years as a bookmark. And on it was, it's probably one of these things that you take off the calendar day by day. It was a day. And it was, yes, this day, 2 Januar. It was a Friday, Freitag, and the year was 1925. The sheet was still there, fresh, a little bit yellow, but still there, intact, moving from page to page. And as I looked at that, I thought, that was not long after the First World War, when Germany had been hugely humiliated. When I was in France, I knew what they used to say, l'Allemagne paiera, Germany will pay, rebuilding, and it never, of course, accepted this huge humiliation after the First World War, massive indemnity, and therefore they were coming back in the 30s with suitcases full of notes which were worth nothing, inflation. And of course that led to the reaction and the building up through the Third Reich and so on. Hitler, at the beginning, was doing a lot for Germany on the economic level. That's why he was so successful initially. So that was all happening after this 1925 that I was looking at me here in that page. And then, of course, 1938, and we know that Lucy of Fatima had warned that there would be a sign. And it was in 1938, and she heard it that it would be during the certificate of Pius XI. And therefore it did happen in 1938, these great lights in the sky. And Hitler too saw it with his generals. And we have, historically true, the fact that he's noted at that moment when they were looking at the bright, terribly bright sky of that night, he said to the person next to him, the equivalent of this, "It'll take a lot of blood to pull this one off." So there was blood in the sky in that strange red light. Which some of you, you wouldn't have seen it, but I've heard about it. It was seen in Britain clearly. And then, of course, we know what happened, that Chamberlain, of course, met with him, came back with this piece of paper, "Peace at any price," "Peace in our time," this was in "Peace in our time," based on one of the prayers in the Book of Common Prayer. And Hitler, on his part, is supposed to have said, "He was such a nice man, I thought I'd leave him my signature." Therefore, he didn't think that the Allies would ever really mean business if he went again, not just Czechoslovakia, but one step further yet again, Poland. And of course they did mean business. The war was declared in 1939, but the true beginning was 1938, according to Lucy, when that happened politically. So that's all following that one sheet of paper. We know what happened. Just only a few months ago, by chance, and you can do the same if you're historically inclined, you can see bit by bit, almost day by day, what actually happened. There's a very, very good documentary, 55 minutes long, on YouTube. It's called Hitler in Colour. And it's basically, I think they've made into colour, or it would have been black and white, but they're bits of film, and it's just done, I heard from my brother, both by the Germans and the British. It's therefore very balanced. There's no story being exaggerated, it's just this is actually what happened step by step. And one sees how it goes up and up and up. Exalt himself, as in the Gospel, will be humbled. And there comes a point, what's after the second front, basically, and he goes into Russia. Then things start to go wrong, and we'll see step by step he's actually getting Parkinson's, and so on and so on. And the last days in this bunker underground in Berlin. The last picture of Hitler is when he comes out just from them to see what's going on and then goes back in. And they're down there, and with them is what someone refers to as an angel of death. The angel of death, it's Eva Braun, his mistress, who then becomes his wife on the Eve. But she was faithful to the end, as was his dog. And it's on the dog that he tested the cyanide. So the dog died, and Eva Braun took the cyanide, and we know now, because it was got out through torture actually, from those who were around, what actually happened. Simultaneously, he took the cyanide and he shot himself, with the order that everything was to be burned, because he knew what happened to Mussolini and his mistress Chiara. So they had to get petrol by siphoning some trucks outside because there wasn't enough, and so on, and they burned them. But anyway, all that to say that we know, unfortunately, from exorcism, that Hitler didn't make it on the other side. We know that because the demons sometimes let things out. And we know, unfortunately, from the case of Annalisa in Germany itself, that the soul of Hitler has appeared in exorcism, that is to say, talked through the mouth of a possessed person. And he and others like Nero and Cain and so on, they've been known actually to declare who they were, so they didn't make it. So whatever one says, it's not judging, it's just saying, okay, We don't want anyone to have the consequences of sin, but whatever happens, it happened forever once full stop is there. Again, time is where I want to finish. All the glory of this world, even becoming the greatest Führer of all times, or perhaps the greatest person in the academic field, think of Athens, Oxford and so on, all the glory of RTE, or the sports field even, it's nothing at all. He who exalts himself will be abased. The only thing that matters in this year ahead is increasing in grace, increasing in intimacy, in quality of time, which is made of what? Merit. The only baggage that we carry. And merit is not made at all of human glory.